Hello.
Happy to report the
Hello.
cataract procedure appears to have gone well. So it's eye drops every few hours. I'm having brunch with her now, so I'll try to eat softly and not make too much chewing noises.
You better not. But that's really good to hear about your mom.
Yeah, then in 2 weeks she has the other eye done. And then eventually by some point in the new year, she'll be done with the eye drops and life will be back to normal.
Very, very good. Hang on, I think I plugged in the wrong thing here. Yeah, hang on 1 second. So, oh, there we go. Slightly less horrible video. So Ivan is just finishing his piano lesson next door. So it'll be, I don't know if you can hear anything, but it's been a bit difficult because, you know, the Russians have removed most of the power in Ukraine and his piano teacher is actually in Ukraine. So they have to do it when they can. Thank you, darling. That's not for you. Right.
Yeah,
So I had something really quite wonderful happen to me this week. I got an email from someone, a real doer and user of things, who requested certain specific pieces for JSON/Visual Meta. That's you, Fabian. So I was very happy with that because that's very real world. You're trying to do something different with the data. So for us to try, if Jacob's available, it'd be really lovely to be able to accommodate that.
I started something without it. Of course, it would be better with it, but yeah, I don't want to have to wait. I want to see also before, you know, asking too much if it makes sense. So I started a bit. However,
You said however, and then you disappeared. Sorry.
however, I could, like, that's kind of the basis of prototyping. Is ideally you get this, but in practice you get that, and you at least have to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Jonathan Finn, he just went through the manuscript of the book. So I'm just going to download it while we're talking so that I can send you a new build because he did quite a few cleaning ups. Your last week's Friday presentation is now in there, Fabian. Have you had a chance to look at that? Does it look fine?
No, I didn't have the chance, but I will, and I imagine it does look fine.
I've added screenshots and everything. Yep.
Thanks for that.
So it's coming down. Yeah, so Peter, last Friday you missed Fabian and great discussion, but of course it was recorded and it's now in the book. And one of the things we discussed, what's that?
Yeah, I'm going to look forward to watching that video as soon as I get a chance.
Oh, great. So one of the things I've heard come up every once in a while is, oh, we shouldn't just have an annual book. We should release something on a more step-by-step. I think, Fabian, you're one of the ones calling for that. And that would be great, except there's absolutely no interaction with the journal. So when we had that, we did have a monthly release, and it was for each thing. But I think we need to build a manner which people can build up a dialogue through that, which is, of course, partly why I'm doing the citation stuff. But maybe with what you're working on now, Fabian, with, oh yeah, cheers. Sorry. Maybe that could be part of our discussion going future, how to maintain our own discussion. I have installed a Mastodon server. I haven't got it all sorted out yet, but it could be an interesting distribution platform for things.
Yeah. It was part of the discussion last time, including like the interaction and how we can on the book of author, including conversation, including live conversation on any format. yeah, to explore. My gut feeling is, as long as there is a URL corresponding to that moment, or that format, or that intention, or that snippet of voice or video, we can manage somehow. It's not necessarily sufficient. It might, as we discussed, lack a bit of context, but at least it's some place to begin with.
By URL, you mean some way to uniquely address it, right?
Yes, but an actual URL. Yeah.
Right. Why?
Because in the end, the video published on YouTube, so here this recording will become a URL through a YouTube video. Could be PureTube, could be something else, doesn't matter so much. The code also is like that. Some of the former Twitter conversation are like that. The non-public one, it's trickier, but it could be, and Mastodon has the activity pub protocol for this. So it could be. For code, it's like this, it's commit. But even for PDF, like if we put a PDF on a server, then we can also reference by page and by different versions. So my again, it's just a gut feeling, and it's also a shortcut because I work with what I know. So my suggestions are a bit centric in that sense. But yeah, as long as there is a URL, and it doesn't have to be publicly accessible, but usually it helps for archiving and just to share if it's not like top secret.
No. Archiving, no, I'm not going to let you have that one. URLs have nothing to do with archiving. At some point, someone's going to stop paying for the domain and there will be nothing. Of course, it is useful for access, but it is absolutely not archival.
Unless you have an IPFS address so that you're actually using, so the URL would actually be a representation of a content hash, so you could get the document without it being bound to a specific location. So that could work for archival if it was a representation of a hash of the document content that could automatically be searched for and found by the network wherever it is. So if someone stops paying for the domain, it doesn't matter because it's not actually tied to the domain. The URL would be the content. We need a content addressable archival memory system for that, as opposed to the current web-based URLs, for which I totally agree suck at an archival approach, because again, someone's going to stop paying for the domain and then it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand this hunger for, in terms of difference in emphasis between Fabian, between you and me, where it seems that you value the let's keep it somewhere else. But as long as we have a way to get that somewhere else, that's what matters. I value more that let's keep it close. I mean, libraries used to have books in them, right? They could also get from another library information. So they needed a network even very long time ago to get another book. But you know, when you're talking about data that quite clearly fits on your hard drive, like my photography collection, it's about 8 terabytes. You know, the iPhone stuff, which to me is social and trivial. Yes, I don't mind it being on iCloud, but the other stuff, why in the world would I not want to have my pictures locally?
So it's because I see my server online as an extension as local, basically. I paid the rent for that server. It's accessible to everyone, and if I don't pay the rent and I put it somewhere else, when I put it at home, I don't see a specific difference there.
I think the difference is that if you know, I'm happy I use Dropbox. So there's a lot of things I share with people that I put online, and I have my own physical entire web server for the work that I do. Unfortunately, now I have to pay for a Mastodon server. It's almost $100 a month, so I may not do it if it doesn't turn out to be useful. But there is a difference between also speed of interaction with things. If you have the data locally, you have it, not just as a cache. I sure don't mind having things backed up online as well, but that's why I think it's really exciting to address something by its description or identifiers or content rather by its location.
Yeah, but I mean, we can have a level of indirection anyway, like a DOI or a hash with IPFS. But I'm not. It doesn't really, to me, it doesn't matter so much, because even if you mentioned the domain falling down or somebody not paying for it, same, you can have a level of indirection where instead of querying directly the server, we have our own set of address for, say, the future of text group, and instead of that going to that server, we replace the URL by another one that we host. So like I've done that a couple of times, stop paying for a server, and then the year before I just redirect everything. I hope people update the URL, but if they don't, at some point, they can either they reuse the redirection or not. But anyway, as long as it's accessible, then I can do something about it, local or not. So I pay for a fast connection. I have fast hard drive at home and on the server. To me, it doesn't make a big difference. I'm more worried about things not being accessible, let's say, and including now quickly, because otherwise I can't work with it. Then I guess the rest, it's kind of the mindset of, I want to build something with it today. Hopefully I will keep on using it in 1 week, 1 year, 10 years, but in practice, more now than later. And that's the bet.
Yeah, I can kind of understand that, but I mean, the current build of our book is over 100 megabytes, for instance. So, because it has pictures and things in it. If it went only future of text, it was only text, it would be obviously a small fraction of that. But, I really do believe there is a value, at least, to having the thing you're working with accessible so you don't have to load a page at a time. And once you're getting up into sizes like that, wouldn't you say, even if, maybe the architecture should be, it can be backed up online, but when you're working on it, why not just keep it locally? Do you remember NC's network computers, big thing in the 90s?
Yeah.
I never quite understood that. I mean, it kind of works for gaming now. Some of the gaming services are so fast at streaming it can do it, but it had to. Anyway, this is not really that interesting a discussion. Okay, I think the book is downloaded. Let me just get it. Oh, it's still not downloaded.
Well, I've been trying an interesting experiment, and I decided that I didn't like some of the limitations in the New Web Literate Programming System. So now I'm trying to replicate its functionality in Tinderbox so that I can get to a point where I know what functionality I want. So I'm using basically Tinderbox as a prototyping platform, and then I could directly implement in Imba and Electron a standalone dedicated app to provide a user interface for literate programming that I've always wanted. But Tinderbox was really working nicely as an intermediate prototyping system because I can use the agents to go filtering things. And fortunately, Mark Bernstein implemented the ability to have Tinderbox action code actions create new notes and also create agents. So that means I can have an agent that spawns sub-agents to go off and do different tasks. And that's sort of like the magic ingredient needed to replicate the web system functionality. Because once you see the name for a new fragment of text that's going to go into the web, you have to start watching for that name's reoccurrence. And if the name reoccurs, you're basically doing a piecewise definition. So the Tinderbox implementation of that is to have an agent look for the first occurrence of a fragment name, and then it creates, well, one agent finds all fragment names. That causes you to get a single anchor point into all of the different name fragment streams that are going to be appearing in the text. That agent for each one of those named fragments to look for scraps of content that go in to build up that piecewise definition. So that's working very nicely for me. And then on the other side, I have the typesetting in. So I'm using Tinderbox for the functionality of organizing the web, restructuring it, and weaving it all together. Then I wanted to get the typeset output to look like New Webs, only a little bit better. So that got me jumping into the LaTeX guide, studying the code being generated by the New Web program for the actual typesetting. And basically the last few days, I've been reading through the low-level documentation for listings packages and cross-referencing packages. There's a whole slew of cross-reference packages that are very challenging to sequence properly because a bunch of the packages patch the code of the other packages. So if you get the load order wrong, the patches are applied in the wrong order and everything blows up. But if you find the magical sequence of code, and then you sometimes have to redefine things in order to make another package use the version of the cross-referencing code that you want. So there's a Vireo package, the CleverRef package, and the CleverRef package is really neat because it will give you a link in to the section and page number of something that you're citing. So you feed a label into that. Then that was considered too limiting. Another package author came up with something called the ZREF system. And with the ZREF system, it will grab all of the information about all the counters that are currently defined, where you're making the reference, and it will store them in a little readable database that can be accessed by other add-on packages on top of that. So it provides ZCref as the command to access it. So I love that system. That's really good because it interacts well with some of the verbatim environments where I want to cite into a specific line of source code. So the ZREF system seems to be right for that. But then some other tools are looking ZREFs and not ZREFs. So I'm going to have to, on the fly, alias CREF to ZREF. So the programs that are looking for a CREF will think they're calling the CREF from CleverRef when really they're getting the ZCref from ZREF. It's enough to have your head explode, but hopefully I'll get it all sorted out and have some interesting results. Now, parallel to that, there's the knowledge package, which I really like because it has an emphasis on having different definitions in different contexts playing side by side. So it's sort of like our different concepts in author, only you can explicitly have them tagged with what the knowledge domain is for the definition, so that you can refer to a definition from another context and have, semi-group string theory versus a semi-group from group theory. So that's very interesting documentation. I'm picking through that now. Basically, the last couple of days have been trying to figure out whether I can force all these different packages to play together or not. So I'm experimenting with different load orders, trying to find one that doesn't blow up. I'll let you know next week if we get it to work.
Yeah, sounds fascinating. Don't have much comment.
Yeah, it's a bit,
Comments on that, Fabian?
it's a bit more low-level detail than I like having to get into the weeds for, because there's a whole bunch of packages that other people have written, and dealing with other people's documentation isn't the most pleasant thing in the world.
No, it makes me think of a conversation I had yesterday over lunch with a friend. He doesn't use the system, but the point was, I think he used Obsidian, and he wrote a plugin for Obsidian. So Obsidian is a open source knowledge management or personal information management system. Open source, as far as I know, and locally hosted. I'm not sure he used it as literal programming, literate programming rather, or notebooks, but he might. The point being that he wanted to, people can publish their Obsidian file or part of it so that the rest of the world can see it, but they don't have to. the point being that, for example, now Peter, what you've built how is it solely for you, or can people, us or colleagues, comment on some of that content? Or is it all on your hard disk and that's it?
Well, right now, everything is local. When I get something working, I'll probably release it as a Tinderbox file. And inside the Tinderbox file, I can generate all of the tech support files that are needed in order to run it, provided someone has a local tech installation. So if you have Tech Live installed on your machine, I'll have a Tinderbox file that will be able to just do everything automatically to use the system. Then inside of Tinderbox, you'll be working with high-level prototype abstractions for sections and code blocks that will be at a much more intuitive level. And you can use Tinderbox as outliner to reorganize code and drag stuff around. Then I have Tinderbox code working that will produce 2 alternate outputs automatically when a given file changes. So the way that works is it uses a Tinderbox note level rule to recognize that the note's content has been shifted or that some of the content it depends on has been altered. And at that point, it will use Tinderbox's shell integration capability to dump that file content out into the file hard drive, and it'll then invoke the tech system to generate final PDF from the source code. But somebody using the system, once I have it working, would just be operating inside of Tinderbox, editing the outlines. Then if it's popular and working well, the whole system could be lifted out of Tinderbox and done directly in IMBA JavaScript land. But for now, I'm heavily leaning on all the functionality that Mark's already built into Tinderbox to be able to do rapid prototyping. And again, so the system will like automatically produce the Tangle version out and the output. This means it sees a note that has output file as its prototype in Tinderbox. It will use a different export template than the literate programming documentation export template. And the export template that will be used for the file to generate the final content of the source code file that you want and dump that into that file name at the selected path in the operating system. So you get all of your source code files out of Tinderbox that way. And then the top level web note template will invoke the woven documentation templates of all of the subnodes in the network to produce one single PDF that would be the equivalent of put from the new web program if you're using new web for your literate programming, as opposed to getting Tinderbox to do it. So it'll be a usable system single file when it's all done. And in that file, we'll generate all the necessary support files.
And do you
So
publish
all
this?
somebody would need, would be a copy of Box and a copy of Tech Live installed on their computer, and that would get them everything for it to be usable.
What I meant to say is, like, do you publish this somewhere where people can comment on that process?
Right now, I'm doing all the development locally. I could probably move it into a GitHub repo later on when it gets to a better stage, but it will wind up being documented in itself. So there'll be like a PDF book version explaining everything, how it works at the end of the day.
In
Which is the
the
point of what-
Tinderbox culture, how is it usually done?
What do you mean? Well, usually using a program like NewWeb for literate programming, as opposed to trying to move it into the more developmental, open-ended, scriptable Tinderbox context. Basically, people in the Tinderbox community will usually just have everything bundled up in one Tinderbox file. And it's real easy for that Tinderbox file to generate any necessary support files. So basically, the Tinderbox becomes the equivalent of a newweb.w file that has the entire project stored in a single document. And then that document can create all of the output documents plus the documentation document, which then has to get run through the typesetting system to produce the final PDF with all of the live hyperlinks to bounce you between sections and follow the indices and cross references and all.
And we
Also,
have
one
more
interesting,
people-
and also one interesting capability of the clever referencing in the typesetting system is that it can give you relative references and positional tests to determine whether one label that you're referencing appears above or below on the same page, on the current page, the previous page, or the next page, or a specific numbered page at some other point further away within the document. And that works because there's a ship out routine at a low level in the typesetting system. So it winds up running multiple passes, puts hooks in the ship out routine to figure out what the page counters are at the point that the given labels are being rendered. It's just like an absolute nightmare of bookkeeping, multiple passes of the system to gather up all the data from the auxiliary files. But with the capability in place, you can get neat things like, see how to get started on the previous page, or take a look at the explanation below on this page, kinds of relative references, which could be really neat in VR too. If you could have something tell you, take a look behind you, or see the note at 3 o'clock relative to your current position. So we might want to have something like that moved into the VR world. I really like that idea of being able to give it as a content, instead of saying, page 3, section 1 on page 3, if you just say, see the previous section on this page, it's a lot more natural when you're reading it. And if we could have that kind of facility, look to your left or behind you or far left to give a reference to finding an object within the 3-dimensional space. So that's where playing with the 2D typesetting system can give us insights into the 3D world.
Yeah,
That's all I have thought-wise at the moment.
Thank you. Went a bit beyond me, but interesting to hear nevertheless. And we have more people now. And Fabian said he'll be back. How is everyone?
Pretty good, pretty good. We had the my departmental Christmas party last night. So very slightly worse for wear. It was inside at Apple Park, and people's +1s were allowed to come. And so there were a lot of people very excited at being able to walk around inside the orchard. And I believe that the apple cider was the apple trees.
Really?
So that was pretty cool.
That is very cool. Yeah, that's special. How late did you stay out?
They actually kicked us out at 9:30. So I was just out for that. And I came home and built a neat thing where you control basically a joystick with your thumb by just moving it on either side of your index finger, front and back and top and bottom, and sort of controlling a pair of googly eyes with that in WebXR. It was a good second being with the rest of the department.
Yeah, very cool. I'm going to pause recording for a minute. And now we just talked about
I would say
over the world. Yes, Brandel, what's that?
I would say my general comment on the military, be it American or otherwise, is that it is efficient at its goals, but that people don't recognize that it's, especially in the United States, its goal is spending money and coming with a political pretext for doing so. And in that, it is dazzlingly efficient. The Joint Strike Fighter and the A-10s and things like that. These are vehicles that are simply not used for any other purpose than for collecting and canvassing votes. They can't be flown, they can't be fired, but they put money into specific states and employ a very large number of people. So, yeah, it does just need to have a wider view of what they're for. And to that end, when I've interviewed people for various positions in sort of AR VR related sort of roles, I have found a number of people who've managed to be the beneficiary of some of that funding for things like being able to understand the logistics panel for the F-35 and know how different components of it are coming along and where the faults are at the factory this month. So yeah, like even when that comes where that I do comes close to warfighting, some of the people who work with me get better on the basis of having been able to sort of drink of the defense spigot here.
Yeah, I take those points completely, and I accept that. I mean, an organism's number one job is to survive and reproduce. I mean, if you've been listening to The Economist's coverage of Xi, China's leader, basically his number one job is to keep his job, and then to keep the party in power. And then, there are all these levels, and one of them it is to reduce America's influence in the world. But, we all want to survive, and as a political unit, the military is a political unit, of course it wants to survive. But at this point, I think it's very easy to say that which side would you rather be on, so to speak? It's probably better to be on the side that's wasted a ton, but at least what was used has been used incredibly well. Anyway, none of us here are neither hippies nor warmongers, so it would be a very nuanced and boring discussion with lots of interesting aspects. But also, one of the things is, so Adam was probably listening, I know he's here, he wanted me to take away his comments in the book, and that's fair enough, and that has been done. I think it's quite sad because some of his contributions, such as locking text to your helmet, that was interesting. It would be really, really nice to have that down, but I'm not mentioning it now out of, oh no, I wish it was different. I'm mentioning it from the point that there's also been some discussion about not just having a book, but also releasing something on a more general basis. We had the journal roughly for the first 6 months, and there wasn't any real take. I didn't market it a lot, absolutely not, but it didn't really become an object for us to manipulate or to cite for another piece or anything like that. So it's still something to keep in mind, but also I'm now no longer in the Twitter thread with the rest of you because it's too frustrating. As my role as editor, I want to show that stuff to the world. So it's better that I don't see it. So in the book as it stands now, and you should be able to download it from the link that I posted, there are basically just purposefully written articles, and there are transcripts. That's all that's in there. And that's probably actually fine for what it is. So at the end of the year, I have 2 questions for you guys. Number one, what kind of a thing would you want the book to be or journal to be in the future? And also, where are you with the book VR representations? Because we're publishing on the 9th. Yes, Fabian.
I'll show something. I'll try to at least. So,
Oops.
let me know when you can see my screen, please. Now,
Yeah, I can see a very slow mirror.
very good. So, can you see the content of the headset?
Yes.
Is it fluid this time, more or less?
Not to me. What do you? Everyone
I'd
else?
say 3 frames per second.
Okay, well,
Well, the hand is not so
Well,
bad.
but-
actually.
okay. If yeah, you can have low frame rate, but I still share quite a bit. But the mirroring on my side looks fast, so I can.
But
So,
can we use our
yeah,
own
tell me.
headsets to go to the same URL and look around and listen to your voice?
Sure. Not to my voice, and it's not network. So you can interact with the content, but you will not see me. You will hear me here through Zoom.
All right. Well, let's start with listening to you. So, is this a fully synthetic environment, or is it meant to represent a specific real environment?
It's mostly to show that it's not exactly like last time. It's still the same principle, the same code and content mix, but yeah, with some differences.
Okay.
Because the presentation of last week, there were a lot of things not done. So ideally, the environment around would be generated through a mix of coding in VR and interaction, like moving around and the shelves and all, but that's far from being the case now. So just use symbolic background again to think about from last week discussion. So the main thing being this, well, if I can grab it. So I can load pages from the book, not super high res, and it's the previous version, not this one. I'm still converting it, the one you shared. And I load a page range, so between the beginning and the 30th page right now, because that's the table of content. That's why I was hoping to get a JSON of some of those data. And I can look at the page numbers, let's say 35, and then grab those numbers here. It's easier for me. Grab the send button, let's say. I can type page number, only 35, but anyway.
Well, Fabian,
start it, and then
Fabian, just an important interjection. When you record this locally, it will be a better frame rate, right?
Sure. Yeah, it will be like 30, 25 FPS or whatever. So yeah, sure.
If you can this weekend record a little bit of what you're doing now and put it on YouTube or whatever, it will be wonderful to have screenshots and the video accessible from the book in addition to what you're showing us now.
Yep, sure, can do that.
Great idea.
I'll do that.
We'll just it'll just be findable at a URL.
Yes, there will be well, it's like right now you can go and just do the same motions, like add the page range or add a specific page and grab it and move it around. So yeah, sure. But I'll make a short video, I'll put it and give you a URL, and you can take screenshots to them. So yeah, the point, some things I did not manage to do, unfortunately, but the idea behind it, again, thinking with last week in mind, is you load a page range, table of content, but then from that page range, you can load other pages or another page range, for example, a specific chapter. And you could have a set of page ranges, one like this, let's say with this horizontal layout, another vertical, let's say per chapter, and like just move your pages around. And then again, if you have some functions don't work, like the next page, I was hoping for today to be able to grab a page, and then if you execute it next page, it would put next to it, that's page 33, that would be page 34, 35, etc. Every time you select a page, you would get the next one, like so. But yes, not for today.
Is it okay to ask questions now?
Yeah.
Okay, first, a little thing before asking question, and that is, I sent a piece to you, I think most of you read it, on my kind of proposal for how to make VR useful for knowledge workers right now. It was basically just to have virtual monitors. And it was really interesting that Vint Cerf completely didn't get that. You know, I'm saying that on the record because he's a great guy, he's a supporter of this, super sharp. But in terms of how different people look at VR, the proposal I put forward, he said it should mirror what we normally have. But that's what I felt I solved. So I found that was interesting. But also looking at what you have here, and this is in agreement with you, Fabian, with the message you sent. Yes, at some point we will have an incredibly immersive environment where text is floating around, so to speak. In background environment, everything is merged. It's like the Lawnmower Man movie, hugely interactive. Of course, we're going to do that, but at the same time, we shouldn't throw away the easy, low-hanging fruits. And what you just shown here, Fabian, I think really goes towards that, because one of the surprises for me when reading and with pass-through is that very often what I'm reading is actually inside the table. Right, it's such a tiny detail, but the screen, I lift it up, but it goes quite far down. You can't physically do that. So you asked me for Visual Meta to also say how many pages, or rather what page range each heading section is. That would be really, really useful because, most of the articles in this book is either 1 page, 2 pages, or a few. Some of them are very long. But if you could just take, let's say, 3 or 4 pages down on the table in front of you and lean forward and read it as one thing, not have to turn pages, tiny, tiny detail, but showing the beautiful interactions you have, it really, it was really nice to be able to stream that kind of stuff. Sorry, Emily's bringing me beverage. Emily, do you want to come say hi? Emily wants to come say hi.
Hi, everybody.
That was just really, really nice to see. Question. In addition to maybe having multiple page spreads, what about murals in this environment? How would you like to have it encoded? If at the end of the book, I have a page that's maybe very high resolution, but it's actually a normal PDF page. But how would you like to have it encoded so the system would know this is actually meant to be much bigger and in a different orientation? Would that be interesting?
We can always, so the also to give a little bit of background for people who are not there at the beginning. Yes, I asked to Frode if there was a way to get, like, now I have 2 formats. One is PDF, that is nice in the sense that it is the typical letter or A4 pages people are used to, but it's unscrutable. Still, at least it has a page of content, which is not something I've inscrutable in the sense that you get move it around, whereas a web page doesn't. It's completely fluid. It can be rendered as, but right now it wasn't with it. So the hope there was to have a table of content referencing the page number, so that those pages, again, as manipulable item with a shape or form, could still like bring this one-to-one natural interaction. But the problem is, mapping the two, how you go from the table of content with the page number to the pages. So of course that can be done manually, but at 700 plus pages, it is not ideal. So that was a little bit the challenge here. But that seems similar in terms of let's say the mural is now it means I took the assumption that those pages would be A4 pages. Maybe they are letter, maybe it's another format, but let's say portrait landscape. If there was data in it that said, oh, those manipulable item, again, to being the usual format, it could be something similar for, then it would be up to Bob to say, okay, that mural, so far, what is best experience in the real world as, and then giving dimensions, like physical dimensions of 2 meter by 1 meter or 5 by 1 or 5 by 1.5. The difference though is like this, having a table of content, let's say as JSON, and then having a PDF A4 or PNG of the PDF. It means you have the complete document and some items of it and the pages. So that would be, I think, again, that's what's interesting, is because you interact with it. You can organize the pages however you want. But then it means it has to be the same for the mural, meaning that you can have just the mural. I mean, of course you could, but we've done that before. So the question is, okay, you put the mural with some information of how it should be physically represented, let's say, or in VR in terms of size, but then you need some degrees of manipulation within the mural. Like here, I broke down into page range representing potentially chapters. It would have to be the same for the mural, meaning even if it just, let's say you have the mural and then you have 50 or 5 items that are the highest level grouping of the mural, and then they each have like a centimeter difference of depth and they're grabbable. Eventually they could snap back in position, because I imagine that, again, Bob was pretty meticulous about position in space, so it's not just there for fun. So it doesn't necessarily, you could reset it, let's say. But yes, that would be what would be missing in addition to how it should be physically represented is some kind of hierarchy, some kind of way to group and describe what can be manipulated.
Yeah, that's all good. Brendel, where are you with something? Will there be something you'd want to share with the book?
It's the second today. I have been turning my attentions to that model tag, the universal scene description. I've been saying format, but it isn't format; it's an API for work, and so I haven't devoted a lot of time to thinking about how I want to represent these things. I did that chat thing. One of the things that specifically this book is mostly dialogues, and so I've been sort of stuck on that, but haven't found something that I actually like. So to Adam's point, I don't really feel like there's anything that I've built that I particularly wish to commit to a record in that regard.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I have to just decide what to put in the book. So
Yeah,
Jonathan
absolutely.
Pin has been doing some editing. I'll be doing some today based on what Mark has pointed out, and then in a few days we should have quite a clean book. I don't expect any further contributions, but on the page of the VR testing, that's what we'll put in then. But I think, Brandel, it would be worthwhile. I'm not saying that anybody should make a full version of the book in VR at all, but you've done a lot of work over the year. Of course, the mural is one, and that's in the book, but also different kind of reading methods. If you want to put it in a shareable form, both as a URL to try for people and a screenshot or that would be really good.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I could probably put some of the format. I've got the system presenting per paragraph. The form that it's in right now is not good enough. There are issues with the formatting chapter that are making it misbehave, and it doesn't particularly look like anything. It's kind of the way that I was formatting Understanding Media, which has longer paragraphs, and so I can have something that is able to collate enough stuff, because the way that we use paragraphs is often too short to be individual meaning. The way that the export that came out of Author ends up using p tags is sort of inadequately terse. So I need to look at a way of collecting enough stuff to make it sort of worth being viewed on a single page. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And also the map from Author from Jason would be really good to have of the book. Of course, it's up to me to give you the final data. So, but the thing is, now I'm talking to you and Adam. In the olden days, if you were doing stuff, there would be pencil sketches. Those pencil sketches would look amazing in a gallery or in a museum long after whatever it ends up being your building. I think you're both being very, very careful in terms of what to show. If things are shown and say this was just a rough sketch, it'll blow up if you do too many words or whatever. I know you're both very professional. You don't want to put anything out that'll be damaging, but if you have anything you want to put with those caveats, or even just a see-through video, I think maybe it's because I've been in academia now for a couple of years. I feel publication date matters a lot. I think that for people needing inspiration in the future, they will want the inspiration to be before 2023. Because, good, bad, indifferent, and so on, the Apple device, whatever it is, going to be so influential. So just have things that people can say, oh, this was actually published. Because we will, of course, we'll have a free PDF. We will give people every other format we can. It'll be HTML, JSON, all that will be available. We'll also have it on Amazon as a digital or physical book. So for anybody in the future who wants to cite it, they could even cite a physical version of this, of course.
Yeah, no, understandable. I don't tend to create any legible intermediary artifacts at all. It's not merely that I'm precious about it. I'm not, perhaps notoriously so.
No, you do.
But that
I've seen so much of it.
Oh yeah, but there are sketches in the form of code that I then overwrite because I'm not using a versioning system.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of, okay, so my own evolution of this, last year it was no VR at all, no AI at all. And then, Brandel, you come along, and now it's all VR all the time. Also trying to do some AI and GPT and all of that stuff. But one thing that I've noticed, we all have different kinds of intelligences and kinds of stupidities. I know that I'm a highly creative person in the sense that I should be able to just sit down and create anything. I can do that. I have a history of that. However, creating stuff in VR that is proper VR native, I'm finding basically obscenely difficult. And I think that, and this is why I'm really annoyed at Adam, and I'm saying that with all due respect, like his experiment of reading where it is actually locked like a HUD. That was interesting. That was really interesting because, like what you said, Brandel, it seemed like people wouldn't like that, but in the way he did it, it was actually really cool. So to be able to have that in a book for just a few pages, but he absolutely refuses to write. Anyway, that's my frustration. My point is, my own brain needs to think like that, and is not ready yet. I'm still thinking rectangles in space, and I think that is okay.
You get a long way with rectangles in space.
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff can be done with that. I'm glad I wrote that little piece that Event kind of misunderstood. That's my way of saying the initial VR. If I was in charge of marketing for a VR company, I would make sure that you put on your headset. If you have a computer in front of you, instantly you get the virtual display. No setup. That has to be the default. And a few other things. I'm happy with that, but it's not very imaginative. So that's why I'm glad that Fabian wrote actually also Adam wrote on Twitter, what the hell? This is really lame piece. Because you're right. But in order to get to that really unlame thing, we're going to have to work harder, guys. And we'll have to figure out some basic stuff so we can pay someone to do some of the work. Because right now, I don't even know where we would invest. Anyway, this thing, I hardly ever use it. So I consider it an investment in finding that out.
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to sell it if you desire.
Yeah, no.
Go ahead.
I mean, I did what Adam suggested. I turned off the hand tracking in the OS, so that when I'm immersed, when I have a huge window and then I use author fed through, it's actually quite good. But it's not that beneficial for that. But all of those really cool VR is going to do this. I'm sure in the cities you're in, you also see some meta ads. We see them on the underground. In the metaverse, you'll be able to do this, that, and the other. No, not without the metadata. And Meta is forgetting about the metadata. It's just so bizarre. Anyway, rant over.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I've been really thrilled by hand tracking, and like I said with the top of my joining the meeting, the impact of having really high fidelity. I don't know if people are watching The Peripheral, the Will Gibson series on Amazon. Phenomenal series, really smart, really cool. But one of the things that they do is they control things basically by doing this, and they're small movements, and but they're actually in WebEx are trackable by looking at the relative orientation of thumb to finger, and even though thumb to forefinger to first knuckle, Because even though one distance, this one here is much shorter than this one, the relative orientation is something that you have a lot of control over because you're putting your distance for it. And so it's actually a really satisfying mechanism for control, and pretty otherworldly in terms of the impact on how to understand what you're doing. It really, to me, underscores the value for systems like the Google Solly, the radar thing that's doing that. But yeah, basic joint tracking that you have the ability to kind of do from a vantage should adequate for it. I think that yeah, the more that we can integrate a meaningful role for hands, the clearer the value of these devices, wherever they come from, will be. But I'm still frankly reeling from it. It's not just the Christmas party, just like it's so amazing. I need to think about what it means for what human computer interaction is really.
Mm. Yeah. It is really interesting how not very far we've gotten over the last year in terms of thinking of something new. It just shows the magnitude of what we're trying to do, I think. But we should try to have a meeting in VR soon for those who want to join that. VR and Zoom, at least the audio in Zoom. So Peter, that's not forcing you to go to the shop or anything, but it would be interesting. You've all tried Horizons Workroom, right?
No, I haven't used any Horizons product.
You need
Just revolted by it. It's just like, what are you doing?
Well, if you have access to it, I think we should go there because it's really, really, really interesting. It is absolutely not what I want our future to be, but there are so many positives and weirdnesses about it that I didn't find obvious. So I think it would be worthwhile. But do you have Oculus Facebook accounts, or I mean, can you even use it?
Yeah, I do. I only have a Quest 1, so I'm not sure if that's eligible for it anymore. I think that they were trying to sort of push people off onto Quest 2s. And, I have
Also asking because
a
I
friend
saw
has one,
Fabian
but
complaining today. I just saw Fabian complaining about trying to set up the devices. Lots of colorful language.
Yeah, so I just want you can have one. I have another one there. I have 3 in the back there charging. Actually, they're fully charged now. Maybe you can see the green lights over there. I give a workshop to kids, challenge goal tomorrow morning. And I was trying to do it. I'm still trying to do it offline, networked but offline, so that they can see each other, but that no data goes out whatsoever. And I was mostly getting it done, but then the reproducibility from one device to another, they were supposed to be the same, like Quest 2, Quest 2, Quest 2, and a couple of 3 Quest 1. And it's difficult to be labeled with less colorful language than today. It's really pulling hair out.
yeah, one of the core things that my team is thinking about is what, and sort of both conceptually and technically, I'm thinking is what is a peer coordination framework that does a better job of being sort of local only. Maybe using a server for the mediation of like peer connections, but can really send well-formed data back and forth to people. And because I just think that it's too, like, the reason why we don't see people do much of it is because it's too hard, and that means that the web APIs are a failure right now. And so people are like, just use WebRTC or whatever. It's just like, no, that's not the answer. The answer is look at, are people doing what you want? like to the degree and to the scale. And if not, then think more ardently about what they need. In the same way that people do not use WebGL, they use Three.js, and in fact, a lot of people are using React 3.5 these days. What does that mean the API should actually be? And yeah, to that end, actually, Ada has been working on an alternative to A-Frame that is pretty interesting. So I'm really keen to see where that goes to as a declarative markup system. Not ready for public release yet, but really interesting.
What's it called?
It's called shorthand. It's internal, so it's not something that will be released for the foreseeable future. But I think that based on her ability to comment out in the wider world, it's something that we may be able to get in front of people and think about its uses of. But yeah, it's really cool. She's really validated a lot of my about A-Frame in terms of what it was built for and the sort of path dependence it's exhibited. So it's been really vindicating and relieving to hear where it is and to have the opportunity to think earnestly about a rebuild.
Fabian, do you have a Horizons thing ready to go or not? Do you have a device for yourself that's for the Facebook account?
I don't even know. I think so, but I don't even know. Honestly, it's been a mess. So I think probably, maybe.
How about for those who want to, we set up a meeting next week to try to meet in Horizons workroom. It doesn't have to be a long meeting, but I think having been there, I mean, I've only been there with my friend Keith, who now works for a while for Meta. He's doing some photography, VR stuff, 360 stuff. And you know, it's very weird. I don't think I would want to work there. Partly it's a bit cartoonish, but also it shows too much. For these meetings, it's really nice that our whole bodies aren't there, right? To be in a physical meeting with someone to have a drink or something to socialize is fine, but to be able to sit here, you know, I got my drink off to the side. You know, all of us sometimes we look at the web while we're half concentrating, which I think is a useful thing, fiddling with our hands or whatever. We wouldn't necessarily want to do that in VR. So the sense of immersion is actually so big that I think it can be a little too much. And from what I hear from my friend who uses Quest 2, when I use the Pro, the facial expressions are actually really well recorded, even though I wear glasses. So, you know, when I question things, he sees it, which is good and bad.
That's cool. That's really cool. Unfortunately, I have to go to a meeting, but yeah, it's been interesting. And yeah, I will sign up for that. It's check it at workroom, so I'm in for that at some point. If other people have a desire, and I'll try to make sure that I can get into Horizons and stuff.
Well, do you say you're leaving now for a meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, no, yeah, that's fine, obviously. Just send an email when you have a suggestion for time, mid next week then.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be good, cool. Okay, see you later, Brandel.
Yeah.
The thing about...
We'll probably get also a Pro either tomorrow or next week at some point. So I'll be able to try it also there and then in Horizon.
Yeah, that'll be really, really good. And also, I think discussing, I mean, I don't know if you're the same kind of nerds, guys, but I'm the kind of guy who likes to talk about the latest Apple laptop and the latest camera gear and all that stuff. I just find it interesting. I think we learn what the limitations are, because when you get into photography, it's easy to think you just point something and then you press a button and you have a perfect picture. Of course, smartphones are actually doing a lot of AI to help with that. But from properly, you need to learn the thing. And it's been such a surprise for so many things when I've actually put on a headset that it's just not what I thought. You know, and that experience is valuable. One of the best things has been the Darth Vader Immortal it's like a semi-game, semi-experience, but when you're standing there as a prisoner, it happens early, I'm not ruining it for you, and Darth Vader comes through the door, even though it's slightly cartoonish, it's there is a real presence there. It's just like, wow, I'm seeing this character in front of me. And, you know, what are we going to have to do to get our work environments to be that rich? Of course, it will happen, but it's really not straightforward.
For the gadget thing, it's kind of, I'm in a weird position and I need to be a little bit cautious because the goal tomorrow for the workshop with kids is pretty much to get them excited, and I guess excited about learning, so that they find something exciting to want to learn, and thus learn about everything that should be boring, like math and I don't know what. But in the end, I'm literally like being overtaken by gadgets. So I try to both be excited and also be like completely blasé or detached about it. Like that's just tough. Like some of it has the potential, hopefully, to be like the next pen and reshape the way I think and the way I interact with the world, and maybe even build things that will be useful in the world. But yeah, it's kind of a weird position. I would be dreaming as a kid to have all those gadgets, and then at some point also I'm like, what's the point of those? Like, which ones are the actual gadgets, and not to spend too much time on it, because otherwise it's like just yeah, wasting time at some point. Like you need to the meta aspect, and not in the company sense, but in the stepping back, is pretty important to be able to say, okay, I'm playing with the gadget and I spent 10%, even 50% of my time, even 80% of my time. But then if I do, I need to be like 10 times more efficient. Like that has to be somehow beside the pleasure of it, but at some point, or being fully aware that it's a waste of time, but then it's just pleasure, and it's then not a waste of time, but it's a different perspective. So I don't know. I'm quite ambivalent now about tech gadgets.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair enough. I mean, what I find is really fascinating is the Apple Watch, because we get having more opportunities for media now. A lot of the time, I just use this. That's all I have. A lot of the times, I want to use this. So there's not going to be one solution, but the opportunities are just still so untapped and so interesting. And I really don't understand. I mean, if I got a job at Meta or Apple to run their VR stuff, I would make such simple decisions. I'm sure you would completely agree. Number one, 90% of the budget should be wild research like we're talking about here. 10% of it should be really simple stuff like let the person scan the room, because they have all the cameras. So do the room, because the pass-through video in itself is really noisy and actually kind of annoying. So that should be one thing. Having the screens in there freely manipulable should be there with absolutely no effort. There are so many things that can be done to make it a sublime experience already. But for some reason, they've done the whole investing in the app ecosystem, quote unquote, expecting developers to do the heavy work. And they can't do the heavy work because of the required experimenting to get it brilliant. Rant over. That was my second rant of the day. Cheers.
But it's the same. Like one has to be cautious of thinking of the potential of, because then if you of course it's exciting, and I hope that's what we do, but then also at some point the implementation or trying to build something of it. But because otherwise, if it's like, okay, today does, and I'm honestly, the demo I showed today, I was not as excited as I wanted to be. I wanted so much more to do, and at some point I just struggle. It's like back and forth, removing the headset, putting the headset back, and I really hold back when I say, oh, it is this, and I really try hard to say it is this and not it should be, or hopefully it will be, and all that, because in practice, yeah, that's what it is. It put like images of the book in a certain layout, and then you can expand it. But yeah, there was so much missing, because otherwise it's a bit of a tech washing, and when we do it, we don't. It's not such a huge risk. Like, we're not going to create such expectation from society. But I think when Apple or Microsoft or Google or Meta does it, it's completely different, because then everybody waits, and everybody, instead of getting either a contract for an entire government or whatever kind of investment, people wait, and it's just a vaporware in there. And the problem is that vaporware at that scale has huge impact for the startups, for the creative, for people that think, oh, I want to do XYZ, which is like building stuff in XR or whatnot, but I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid Apple or Meta is going to do it faster and better than me. So I think I'm super cautious about promises, or like, oh, this device doesn't do ABC today, but it might in the future because it could do anything. I think for us to say it is fine. For those big companies to say it, it's really dangerous. It's eating mindshare, developer mindshare, user mindshare, politician mindshare, and then preventing your future from happening, basically.
100%. 2 points. Number one, if you want someone to do the testing with you, I should be available quite often. So I can be in VR. You know, I press the reload button and I tell you whether it works or not. That could always be fun. On the other side of development, the thing is, every time you introduce a new functionality or freedom of movement or capability, you introduce more complexity. So the human interaction bit is making sure that the additional complexity warrants what this new capability can deliver. And of course, it is done in as little, with as little superfluous, unnecessary complexity as possible. Today, we're in a weird situation where it's hard to experiment with complexity. I mean, I'm lucky with author and reader because Apple have some good APIs. Of course, it's within their mindset, but there's some insanely powerful thing I can just ask Jacob to do, and sometimes he can, because there's things available for it, and other things that I think are easy that are not possible. But my point is, you know, I don't know who said it, but in VR, the world just isn't ready for these things yet. So the one huge benefit we have in VR, and this has been brought up by many times, is the direct manipulation aspects, because we already have the capability of this meaning something that's wired in our brain. So for instance, the thing that I desperately want, put the headset on, video, virtual display, I should be able to just lift up the top of my display to make it bigger, just do that kind of a thing. That's reducing an absolutely incredibly small amount of complexity for the utility that I get out of it. But if I have to do that on a computer, I may actually have to program parameters to change how these things behave. That's a huge amount of complexity for a small amount of utility. So VR really has an opportunity to give us that. Let me just try to finish this sentence. It's difficult to think. I think we can look at it as, if an implementation of a function is done well in traditional computing, the relationship between complexity and utility is 2D. Literally, we get more complexity, more utility, just a little complexity. You know, that's the ultimate. Very often it tends to be somewhere over here because it's difficult to do, but it's possible, right? But what do you get in VR? You get this. You get a 3D model of that. So when we're talking about perceiving 3D data objects, we get that. But because of the model itself is 3D, we can really lower the complexity angle for the utility. But none of that can happen if the data isn't there, as we've said a million times. And also, as you said, Fabienne, you're right. There is a concern that Apple will do a version of it, so why invest, whatever it might be. completely agree with that. But the thing is, when you have such huge complexity, even though this is complexity that maps onto our bodies and our minds. Sorry, Emily just texted, I left the fridge open. That's not good. That's a bit of an interruption. That we really, really need to prototype it. And that can mean cardboard models floating on strings. So, you know, what you talked about, Fabian, you're absolutely spot on. But, and Adam, this is why I am intellectually really annoyed at you, because you have done some really good experimenting contributions to the community. You know, one of them is locking text to view, which very, very interesting. The other ones you've done are models of text in a circle around you. These types of things are really, really worthwhile. I saw the message, Emily, I'm sorry. That was very odd. I blame someone else. Anyway, for how we choose to go forward next year, and I know it's only the 2nd of December, we should probably have a little bit of a think about what we want this thing to be. You know, we call ourselves a lab, what that actually means. I know that one thing I think we should do is be a bit more hardcore, making sure we do have a presenter every month, because it takes me 2 to 3 days to fix the transcripts and all of that stuff, but I think that's time really well spent. And then put it in a book at the end. But should we have a journal? And if so, it has to be PDF, but what else should it be?
As long as it's addressable, like we started the discussion today with either a hash, a reference, a URL, all three and more. To me, that's fine. It's just being addressable and accessible. That's my only concern.
Yeah, addressability is the only way you can address something. It's an absolutely massive issue and field, and hardly anyone even thinks about it. Right. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, one thing that I would like to do maybe is to build Mastodon support into Author so that I can write my big, important change the world piece and click a button. And those of you who are also Mastodon can see that. And if you use only Mastodon to make a comment back, that's fine. If you write a piece as well, that's fine. But I think it would be incredible to build an environment where somebody says something thoughtful, like, again, Adam, using you as a prime example. When I wrote my piece on the simple way to make VR good, and you wrote a counter argument, that was proper thoughtful stuff. Now, for some reason, you don't want it to be shared, and that's annoying, but you were actually the only one who really thought about it and wrote a riposte. I really think that if there was an environment, whether public or not public, where instead of having it just scrolling into the ether like Twitter and Facebook and all social media and text messages, we could have a view at the end of the year, let's say, where we could really go through that. We've talked about it a lot. Brandel did his magic carpet and all kinds of things. But I think the discussions we're having today, there's so much waffle, including actually today. It's worthwhile for us. And very often after about an hour and a half, 2 hours, we get into something. But, hardly anybody will want to go through the whole thing. But if there is something that comes out of it that we present, here's a statement on so-and-so, and to have that be addressable and citable, it'll slow down our thinking. And I think that will help our thinking. People in the past used to write letters to each other. Those letters are findable now. That's how we write biographies. Most of what we write today will be dead a few years after we're dead.
I think there is also a fine line between setting up some deadline or constraint in terms of publishing or sharing or something. Like deadlines do help because it means something must be produced. And sometimes it's also it's like some performance anxiety, like, oh, it has to be, and because we're exploring something hopefully truly novel, then there is no insurance anything will come out of it, anything at all, but also anything interesting or anything new. So
Sure.
it's a little bit, it's a tricky path to walk. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. I think that's fine. I think I understood you. But the reason I'm talking about monthly and annual deadlines is not because I'm an editor or writer. That is not what I am as a human. That's a role I have to do now. It is more, my professor Ed, he said deadlines make things happen. And a piece of art, you have to frame it at some point. But of course, we all agree that these boundaries are artificial. And we should be, whether it's plain old PDF that everybody hates, or if it's HTML, JSON, whatever, we should be able to bind whatever size we want. I'm going to try to take volume 1 of the Future of Text and convert it into the same thing that we have now, so that we can start experimenting with that kind of stuff. And going forward, we should do even more. But we all have lots of things going on in our lives, and if we feel that, oh, the book's coming out on the 9th, there's a little bit of a, okay, I have something to say. Okay, I'm not going to do this other thing today. I'll write that down. But if it is, whenever, it may not happen, right? Fabian, can you have a look at the book while we are together?
Yeah, I updated it on my demo, so it's the last version.
So, well, I gave you a newer one in our chat today.
Yeah, that's the one I added.
Oh, okay. So let's have a quick look at, where are you? Yeah, Fabian, page 250, I think it is. Yeah, 250. So I just want to tell you guys, and please talk to me because I can't see you now, if you disagree with this kind of formatting. Also, obviously, I hope Peter and Adam will look if they have time. The idea is that if you look at page 250 of Fabian's piece, I have bold headings and so on. That's it, other than the names of the people talking in the pre-presentation section. So the idea is simply that whenever there is something that I, as initial editor, and of course, if you see something different, please tell me and we'll change it, represents what that chunk of discussion is about, that should be bolded. So if you then go to page 253, that's where the presentation starts. And one of the arguments against pages rather than scrolling layout is, of course, what happens here. If you introduce a picture, it's going to be the wrong size and we have extra wasted space, but that's just the way it is, right? So I'm also trying to pull out the main things. So what I want to do with you, Fabian, is the same as I think we should do with every presenter. If you want to highlight in a PDF what you think should be bolded, and also if you highlight something that is bolded, I know that you want it unbolded, then I will change that if you feel that these highlights don't represent what you think was the key of those sections. In Barbara's one and Andrea's one, I also have some headings, primarily in Andrea because Bob Horn did that. I think that takes a lot of space, and I don't think headings communicate much. But I think the whole thing is an experiment. It should be entirely up to the individual presenter. But Fabian, you should feel free to tell me whatever you want.
I'm going through, it makes sense, so.
Cool.
The highlighting part is tricky.
It is. It's very, very arbitrary. And, I'm only human. I get bored, so I may very easily miss something.
Yeah, but sure, but it's not. It's also not random. It's not idiotic. So I think it's interesting. As long is it also mentioned anywhere that it's you bolding it?
That's a good point. Please go to one of the first pages. I have on page 17. Have a look at that, please.
Yeah. Page 17.
It's just a logo.
Yeah.
Underneath it says this publication has grown out of a decade of annual symposia on the future of text. The symposium and book is an experiment and experience as everything we do. Might that be a place where we put something about how we're presenting the book, as in the bolding is done by the editors or something, or should that be somewhere else? Because I completely agree, that's worth highlighting.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Or there is something on editor's perspective on page 20 that could also be there to say that that's how there was no bolding and it's been added freely, let's say, by the editor.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's obvious because it's a transcript, so there wouldn't have been any bolding. But I think, you say page 20. No,
But it's not obvious because it could have very well be the authors of the presentation who does it, or
that's a good point.
Or AI or something. So
yeah, okay, I'll add it there. But on page 20, that's the perspective on reflections on working in VR so far. Okay, I've added it. So on page 20, that's where I'll start listing whatever you might have. And also, guys, if you have anything under reflections on working in VR so far. Adam's typing things, let me see. Do we have t.co links?
yes.
Oh, we have, yeah. Yeah, that's not my fault. That's all Brandel and Fabienne. All your fault. Okay, let me just see. No, but hang on. Aren't they the same? The ones in brackets, actually. No, okay, no, it's not. Hang on, let me just check on this.
Also, let me show you something for the anecdote and for the archiving part, because it goes also to the t.co. Let me know when you can see my screen, please.
Yeah, I can see.
So that's I have my website, and then I have the twitter-archive.benito.fr. So I have a subdomain dedicated to gathering maybe not everything I wrote, but at least hopefully most of what I wrote, and I can go back to the original if need be. But yeah, it's there on the website in case Twitter really does go down. Yeah, didn't took me too long to do.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's something to consider as we rely on these kind of platforms that we don't own, unlike let's say Mastodon or self-hosting one's website. But yeah, I did the same for Twitter, and I think for LinkedIn. But I think I will overall try to make a habit of it. Like whenever I do accept to delegate some of my content and work to a platform, because it's a social one, so I have to interact with others this way, and it's not properly federated. I'll probably make a monthly habit, like a digital hygiene, like brushing my teeth. I download my data, which I was doing sometimes, but not as frequently. But then I also have a way to ensure rather to always make it remain available. So I say this now because also one way, I don't suggest it to do for this for the book, but you could also point to an archive of the tweets rather than the tweet themselves, or both, or mine or another one. So that would also be another level of indirection, but this way we're ensuring it's stable enough. Or
Sorry, I did hear most of that, especially the bit about pointing to Twitter archives rather than Twitter. So what is this? Is this your archive?
yes, and the software I use to present it.
Would you like me to include this? Should I include this in your profile or somewhere else?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I think it's positive in the sense of showing an example of trying to be reliable despite troubled times. So why not? Why not? Because I think maybe again, even though it's pretty far from being perfect, it does show that even though we use such a vast number of tools, we're mindful of being resilient. So I think that could provoke some interesting conversations.
Yeah. Okay. Any other updates or plans or things?
Yeah, I did not. I think I didn't show it last time. It's not really finished either, but I mentioned it before. Little typing game, mostly for kids, where they type letters or they grab letter of a word like cat. And now I have a little example that if you do type cat and you typed it correctly, then the cat appear and then you can manipulate it. So between this and the workshop tomorrow, I hope to be also at some point being able to have a kids in VR workshop for storytelling or creative or programming or a mix of both. But yeah, that's work in progress.
Yeah, that's cool. It was. I just saw again the video of Edgar. Second time he's in a VR headset about a year ago. where he was doing blocks like almost Tetris, and yeah, just had no problems instantly manipulating things. And when it turns out something was behind a physical door, that wasn't a problem either. His brain understood the difference. It's just going to be very different from them growing up at an earlier age with this stuff. So that's all.
Yeah, and I read, I discussed a bit with some of my colleagues at the parliament on technology and kids and addiction and whatnot. And I saw an article from forgot, but I think Stanford Medical School or School of Medicine on mobile phone usage. And they were saying, according to that study, there is basically no addiction to it. There might be addiction to some of the app or the content, but let's say they did not see any loss of sleep or attention based on how early one would give a mobile phone to children. So I think that's quite interesting. And so I imagine it's not the same with VR, but I imagine it could be similar, that it's more of what you invite the kids to do, what they actually do with the device, and also maybe the state of mind they're in. Like if everything is shit around them, just like an adult, they would escape in that content or the device with the content in it. But otherwise, there is no reason to imagine that, as soon as you give a phone the younger you give a phone to a child, the more addicted they're going to be. That doesn't seem to be the case.
Oh, interesting. So, right, let's see if we have a meeting in VR next Tuesday or so, depending a bit on Brandel and your availability. I should be available both days. Yeah.
Tuesday might be tricky for me, but Tuesday or Wednesday might work. And hopefully I'll have set up the device by then.
Cool. But also, if you are ever in Horizon's workroom and just by yourself want to have a look around, if you ping me, text me on Twitter or whatever, I'll try to come in and then we can see what it's like with a person. Yep. It's ridiculous how far away it is to be useful, but it's also ridiculous how high tech it is. 10 years ago, we could hardly have dreamt about it, but now it's just implemented in the substandard way. Anything else? Or should we wrap up? Sorry, go. What's that?
No, I think it's interesting in the sense that I am ready to try this kind of things and do little experiment, social or not. That's like I'm always up for it, and it's always a moment of either fear or like, wow, that was a good idea. I wish I had done it, and also a moment of loss of agency because I'm within someone else's system. And I know for example, if I see a cool feature, I'll have to re-implement it myself, maybe from scratch, if I can. Because otherwise, I'm not going to email one of the Meta developer and say, oh, that's cool, but what if you were to do this? Because they're developing a product potentially with thousands, millions, if not billions of users, at least that's their dream. So they were going to maybe do it, but it's going to take forever. So in practice, when I try this kind of content, it's always with a little bit of apprehension when it's not open source, because I know that, at some point, no matter how good that thing is, there will be limitation. And it's very rare, sadly, that there is like an escape valve, like some plugin system that would allow me to try the thing, the new idea it creates, because that's what I get there for. I try it not just to try it, but to get novel ideas. And when I can't, when it's like a Lego block with a smooth surface, you cannot do anything with it. It's like, oh wow, it's a beautiful block, but I'm stuck now. So that's a little bit the mindset of sometimes being not as how do you say, thorough in trying to test the content that I know will be locked.
Yeah. Changing the world is not easy.
But it's interesting.
It is indeed.
I'll prepare a couple of video of the layout with a page range. Maybe I'll do a couple of page range, one for the table of content like I did, opening a page or two specifically, moving them around, and then another page range, maybe with an article or a couple of articles, maybe different layout, I'll see. That will be for Sunday, I guess, because the workshop tomorrow will take all my time.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough. All right, well, let's stay in touch. Look forward to Monday, and soon we will be releasing. It is next Friday. I guess we should just do the same time as we always do for our launch
Yep.
party, so to speak. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, regular time's good.
Good. Okay. I'm gonna send out an email afterwards. We should probably also have. Hang on, I'm just writing the heading, the subject. Yeah, should we have presentations or how should we do it?
I mean, what about? I suggest you do a presentation on what brought us all here together, and for that specific day, even if it's just 20 minutes, because that should spark conversations.
Yeah, I can waffle on about that for 20 minutes. That's not a bad idea.
And if you want, one of the provocative question after such a presentation would be like, what if a certain Doug had the Quest Pro today and he had that book in any format he'd like, let's say the three we have, to be more pragmatic, what would we expect or want, or what are some of those ideas that could be extended with that hardware and content?
Sorry, I'm just, things are on the way.
Since you're sharing the screen, I would still put in parentheses like example, e.g. Quest Pro, and e.g. the future of text 3.pdf or something like this. So because otherwise it sounds very philosophical, which is fine, but we can blend the two, something out there, philosophical, but also very pragmatic.
I have no idea what you said because I was typing. Please repeat.
Please put in parentheses next to good headset today. Example, Quest Pro or Quest 2 or like one device. Yeah, and then the way we think and communicate, and same in parentheses, reading and writing the future of text 3.pdf or .liquid or something like this, but an actual piece of content, because otherwise we think about like the future of humanity and things like this, and it might be fair, but I think a practical example, and if people don't want to think about the book as an example, that's fine, but at least there is an offered common thread.
Something like that. I'm trying to be a bit funny, but
then how might he want to read that content? Like again, if we imagine from his perspective.
I was thinking.
Well, in 50 years, we'll probably have a Neuralink chip from Elon in our brains. So we'll be able to just visualize the book by calling it up mentally.
I have a Tesla Model S. I'm still no fan of Elon Musk. He is a financial genius, marketing genius, but he is also a big effing liar. He said full self-drive will be absolutely by the end of the year now, 5 years in a row. So that's my comment on Elon. When it comes to Neuralink, I don't actually give a monkey about neural stuff, because even if it's just controlled by our brain, there will still have to be mental faculties to do that control. And today we have incredible brain, like a huge part of our brain right here in the parietal lobe is to control our hands. So we have, if devices could log into those, that would be a real neural connection. Otherwise, we're going to have to rebuild stuff to connect with this other stuff. So that notion is annoying. Anyway,
Dana is ready.
okay.
Dana
I'm
is
coming to.
You'd better. Yeah, so that, but am I being too playful with the last one?
No, I think it's good. We have to be playful. No, but no. I might. What? No. Yes, because otherwise we start to have a discussion about format and PDF and whatnot. Whereas, yeah, we can do both.
Hey.
No.
Something's wrong with the heating in the living room. Figure out.
Okay, it needs to be basically off and on. I'll help. Okay. Oh, check this out, guys. I'm being sneaky. What do you think of that? I'm thinking maybe we switch with all caps to you. Okay, I'll cut this, so I can always paste it again, but is that a sneaky way of getting them to think a bit deeper? Or is it just...
I think then if you do this, just highlight that you will do a 20-minute presentation before. This way we can define all terms, maybe hardware, and then no matter how either open-ended or critical people might be, they'll know they'll be up to speed up to a certain point on the topic.
How about the bolded stuff?
No, I'm going to have to drop now. See you next week.
Yeah, look forward.
Me too. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good weekend.
I think this is fine. Are you still there, Fabian? Everybody's gone. Okay, well, that was useful. I'm going to upload this and send that email.